I have obtained the 4K Steelbook edition of Superman, and it's awesome. It has this like slipcover to it, which I didn't know that they made for steelbooks. Any steelbook I've ever had has not had a slipcover to it, so that's a nice addition. And evidently this also glows in the dark a little bit, which is cool. So yeah, these things sold out like super fast, so I was super fortunate to be able to pre-order one. So yeah, just wanted to show you guys this. It's awesome. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm sure that I'll watch it soon. So yeah. Okay, so we already know from James Gunn's Instagram post the other day, a few days ago, a couple things. One, Man of Tomorrow script is already in its second draft, which is like crazy how fast James Gunn can write. But secondly, there is a picture on the front of the script, which has the neck and head human anatomy. It has a picture of, I put a picture right here, of somebody's insides, but the big focus is that it shows the person's brain. So this is obviously very likely a hint towards Brainiac, and him essentially confirming without confirming that Brainiac is going to be the big bad of Superman 2 / Man of Tomorrow. This is interesting, and I would argue that he is the second villain that you think of when you think of a Superman villain, next to Lex Luthor, which is that much crazier that he hasn't been in a movie yet. So that's super exciting. It's funny because I've written out kind of this long list that is my wish list for the Superman sequel / Man of Tomorrow. I'm still not really sure what James Gunn means by like this follows up Superman 2, but it's not actually Superman 2. I guess we'll see what that means. Maybe he's hinting towards that, like, we know that Lex and Superman team up in this movie, so maybe it's just like they're both the main protagonist. Like Lex is actually a protagonist in this movie, is what I'm right now taking that as. So that's interesting. But even before I knew that, I had written down things that I wanted to happen in this movie. So I wanted to go through that and show you guys what I have. This is totally a wish list. I think some things are realistic, but I'm certainly not expecting most of these things to happen, although I would love if they would. So I'm just going to go down this list. Brainiac was actually already in there, so that's one thing crossed off the list. I had him in here as a cameo because I didn't initially think he was going to be the main villain, but I always prefer Brainiac as a Justice League villain, but that's fine. I'll take what I can get. Okay, so the first two things on my wish list are things that I do not want them to change. So things that were established in the first movie that I think should stay established, and there should be no changes to. The first one of that is Superman's costume. So it's super common in comic book movies for from movie to movie for there to be some costume refinements or total costume changes for the superheroes. So like Captain America has had a bajillion different outfits. Iron Man has a different marked suit like every movie. So like they're constantly changing. Batman has had changes to his bat suit pretty much every movie. And while a lot of those are cool and I enjoy a lot of them, sometimes it's like I want them to just like stick with it. Like especially with a suit that works so well as Superman's does in his movie, you don't really need to do anything to it. Just keep it as it is. I didn't know how I would feel about the red trunks. I love the red trunks. So just like keep it like that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, if they are going to make changes to the suit, the only thing that I would personally be okay with, I mean, I'd be okay with anything. Like I'm not going to cry about it, but if they made the lines on his suit less like intense, like they're very bold and they're very intense and they're very jagged lines, and I think that lines work. I think it adds some more texture to the suit. It adds a little bit more design to it, but I think they're a little bit too intense in that costume. So I prefer them to do nothing, but if they are going to do something, then I think maybe just tone down how intense the lines look, which is, like, now that I'm saying about it, the most nitpicky thing ever. But that's because I like the suit so much overall. So if they're going to change something, I want it to be small. All right, the second thing that I want changed is probably a little controversial, but the Jor-El and Lara message, basically, revealing that they're kind of tyrants and they want, Superman to rule over Earth and have a harem and all that weird stuff. A lot of people think that's going to get retconned in future movies, and I don't think it will, and I don't think it should. I think if you retcon something that is that big and that important to the first movie, it just, like, for me, it takes all of the impact away. Like, I was already kind of not sold on that aspect of the story when he's just watching this translation. Superman is just watching the translation that had been decoded by the engineer on a cell phone, and it's like, oh, like, this is the big plot point. That felt a little bit weak to me, but once we found out in the movie that, like, it's not doctored, like, it's actually real, then it worked. The moment that you reveal again, oh, it is doctored, like, it just makes it feel even more silly that, like, okay, if this wasn't them, you feel like, I don't know, you feel like maybe Superman would know that somehow. It seems like an easy plot point to be like, no, like, this is not what my parents were about, even though obviously he never really knew his parents. So either way, I hope that they keep this. I hope they don't retcon it, and I don't think that they will retcon it. I think James Gunn has said a couple times, like, no, like, this is what it is. So it's not my favorite storyline. Like, I wouldn't have done it because I like Clark's parents a lot, but that's okay. That's, like, this interpretation. It's different. If I want to experience good parents for Clark from Krypton, I'll go look at any of the, like, other interpretation where Jor and Lara are great people. Okay, so now I'm going to get into what I actually do want from this movie. And at the top of my list are going to be, like, characters that I want to show up. We obviously had the Justice Gang in Superman 1, and I really enjoyed watching them, seeing them. It was cool to see, especially Guy Gardner in action. Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl. They were all great. It was really entertaining. Metamorpho. But if I had my choice, I think that I would maybe sideline them for this movie or give them very brief scenes. I would really like some sort of spin-off with them, to be completely honest. And then I want to bring in some other characters. Maybe not quite as many. Really only 2 big ones. But I want them to share the same screen time that all 4 of those other ones had. So they play a major role in the movie, but just not as many characters. So obviously the big one, and then I guess it's like technically 2.5 characters, because Krypto's there. So Krypto obviously played a big part in Superman 1, so I want him to play a big part in the second Superman or Man of Tomorrow. But I also want Supergirl, like his owner, to play a really big role. I want to really amp up that feeling of the super family. I want her to play a big part in this story, and I think there's really a lot of potential for that, since she's older than Clark, so you could potentially tell the story. She remembers the destruction of Krypton. We could even do the thing, running it back, that has been done a couple times, where Brainiac actually destroyed Krypton, takes Condor, bottles it up, and maybe Supergirl remembers that, and she has a vendetta against Brainiac, or maybe she doesn't remember exactly that it was Brainiac, but she was there for the destruction, maybe helped Clark escape, or something like that. I think that would be a cool way to tie Brainiac and Kara together. Okay, so quick note for anybody who doesn't know kind of what Brainiac's deal is. His entire motivation is just to gain knowledge, to gain essentially infinite knowledge at whatever cost necessary. He's like an alien cyborg, kind of like half organic, half mechanical, so cyborg, and his entire goal is just to gain knowledge. So what he'll do is he'll fly around in space in his skull-shaped spaceship, which is very comic booky, and I can already see James Gunn just having a field day with this ship. And he'll kind of what he does is he I don't know how. It's just like comic book logic, but he'll bottle up the most the capital or the most dense city on the planet, or the city that has the smartest minds, the best knowledge, the things that hold the most knowledge in that planet. He'll put that in a bottle, and he'll add the bottle to his collection. He obviously shrinks it, puts it in the bottle, adds it to his collection, and then he'll destroy the planet. So in many interpretations, that's what happened to Krypton. That's how Krypton was destroyed. So I can definitely see them doing something here, and I think that'd be cool to tie in, that with Kara, with Clark, and Crypto, and all of that. That could really expand the mythos of Superman and the Super Family. Another character that I want to show up, which I really want them to do, is Martian Manhunter. So if they can find a way to get Martian Manhunter in this story, I would die. This would be so good. It makes so much sense. He was actually in the most recent solo Superman animated movie. I can't remember what it's called. Is it called Man of Tomorrow? It might be called Man of Tomorrow. Hold on, let me look it up. It is called Man of Tomorrow. That's crazy. Okay. We might be onto something. Either way, yeah, so I really want Martian Manhunter to show up here. I think he would be, he's the heart of the Justice League in the comics and in the show. And so adding him would just, start that little trickle of introducing Justice League characters, maybe starting to form somewhat of a team and focusing on that aspect, creating these little links. I think that Martian Manhunter, obviously being an alien, not being from Earth, can relate to Clark in ways that other heroes can't necessarily, like Batman or any of the other Earth-based ones. So having him in there, I think, would be a really big asset. There's also this story in Scott Snyder's Justice League run, which you guys would probably think would be crazy to put in a movie, but I would love to see it. That essentially, I'm trying to remember exactly what happens, but essentially Lex Luthor's father ends up kidnapping Jean, or Martian Manhunter, as a kid, brings him back to his lab and ends up doing experiments on him. And through a whole lot of, story stuff, Lex as a kid and Martian Manhunter as a kid basically end up bonding over their shared captivity. So Lex isn't actually in a test tube like Martian Manhunter is, but Lex feels trapped in this lab that he's in, and they end up being able to communicate with each other. Lex draws messages on, I can't remember if it's his shirt or if it's on the test tube, but he draws it a certain infrared frequency so that only Martian Manhunter can see it. And there's some really great bonding moments where they're kind of just trauma bonding. And there's this really sad moment at the end where Lex's father is basically done experimenting on Martian Manhunter. He's going to kill him. Lex ends up being able to warn him, and he rigs the machine to essentially, when they try to activate it to kill Martian Manhunter, it'll send it back to Mars. Because he's Lex Luthor and he's a super genius, even as a child. Just go with it. So, but what ends up happening is, before they leave, they're both crying, and it's super sad and emotional. And one of Lex's final things that he says to Martian Manhunter is, "Please remember that we weren't all bad." And it's just oh my gosh, that hits so much harder, knowing that Lex grows up to be the worst villain, and just having that weight, it would add so much emotion to the movie, in my opinion. So other people might think it would be silly. That's fair enough. I get it, but I think it'd be really good. And I think it would create an interesting backstory for Lex, who, up until this point is just an evil genius because, he's an evil genius, which I'm fine with that. I don't need motivation, but if it's just right there, then I say go for it. Okay, so we're already unhinged here because we have Lex Luthor and Martian Manhunter being childhood best friends. So let's just go even crazier. My next item on the wish list, I think, is going to make a lot of people even more than the last one. But just hear me out. Let me explain. I think I have a good reason for it, and I think that it would be very interesting. Okay, so Lois Lane gets superpowers. She becomes Superwoman, basically. There's precedence for this. 1, All-Star Superman. She gets powers temporarily, which we know that James Gunn loves All-Star Superman. So there's 1 point for me. And then secondly, up until recently, a couple months ago, Lois Lane had superpowers. So I think that was because of the fallout with, was it like Absolute Power? I don't remember exactly why she had superpowers, but she did have superpowers. But with that being said, that's not how I would give her superpowers. So I think this would be really cool to add to the additional, like I said earlier, the super family. We want to get the Superman family dynamic going. I think this would be really cool to give Lois powers. I think it'd be cool, like, they just show up sometime. Like, she doesn't know why. They just started showing. She started getting powers. And then kind of like, I guess the twist, I would say, midway through the movie or at the end, or whenever, is that you would find out that she's pregnant with Clark's baby. And Jonathan Kent, of course, I'm a big fan of him. I started reading comics when DC Rebirth was happening and first coming out, and that was when Jonathan Kent was created, who is named after Clark's Earth father, Jonathan Kent, his son, Jonathan Kent. So he's a great character. I really want to see him show up. I stole this idea from Jeremy Adams' Flash run, I believe, where it's Wally and Linda. They're married. Linda ends up getting super speed, and then you find out that she's pregnant, and like she probably has her powers from the baby. As I've grown older, I've really found myself appreciating when the few times that DC and Marvel have allowed their characters to grow older, to get married, and to have children. That's something that's kind of meant a lot to me as I've gotten older, and so I'd really like to see that implemented here. I'm sure it won't be. I wouldn't be surprised if Lois gets pregnant at some point. I doubt it'll come this soon, and I'm pretty confident that they wouldn't give Lois superpowers, although I do know that Rachel Brosnahan wants Lois to have superpowers, and I watched an interview where she was trying to convince James Gunn, and James Gunn did admit that it was happening in the comics. So it could totally happen. It's not that crazy, but it's a little crazy. Okay, so with those out of the way, there's obviously like the big elephant in the room. We haven't seen the Batman for this DC universe yet. I know there are, I think they're called merger bros, where they want Robert Pattinson to merge with the current DCU, even though it's currently separate. And I will admit that James Gunn is kind of being like, he's saying no, but then he's like leaving a little bit of wiggle room. Same with Matt Reeves. They're saying like, no, it's separate, but like when they say it's separate, they leave like a little bit of wiggle room there. So I think my interpretation is it is separate, but they're just, whatever happens, if this Brave and the Bold script doesn't work out, maybe they can find a way to shuffle in, or maybe, the Batman 2 has already, the script is written and they've already figured out a way to shuffle them in. I don't know. I really want them to stay separate because I want a Bat family. I want an extended Bat family, not just Damian. I need Nightwing, my boy Tim Drake, hopefully, although he's always the one that they kick out when they, feel like they have too many Robins. So that's unfortunate, but Jason Todd would be awesome. So I want a Batman that has existed for a while, but I'm like getting off topic. I should make another video about like my Batman wish list. But I think that it would be a missed opportunity, without knowing the script, I think it would be a missed opportunity to not include Batman in at least like a scene of this movie, and kind of conveying the world's finest that, we all love from the cartoons and the comics. And, there was rumors when this script was being written and nobody knew what it was, that it was a world's finest script. So I don't know how those rumors started, but I do remember seeing relatively reputable people sharing that as well, saying, yeah, I think this is the case. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if Batman shows up, and I hope that he does. Okay, so that is my wish list for Superman. Not really like mini story beats other than like the Condor, Kryptonian, or Krypton destruction with Brainiac, and maybe bringing Kara in with that, I think would be really cool. But really just like things that I want to see in the movie, and characters I want to pop up, and themes that I want to be explored. James Gunn said this isn't going to be quite as comic booky as Superman, so which is fine with me. Like, I love how comic booky Superman was, but every movie has its own tone, and that's something that James Gunn is really led into, like letting each project have the tone that is the best for the project. So anyways, that is my wish list for Man of Tomorrow / Superman 2 / Lex and Superman team up movie. I do wonder, like, Man of Tomorrow is, you know, obviously synonymous with Superman in the comics, like he's known as the Man of Tomorrow. But I've seen some people mention this, and I've thought about it too, like, what if, like, Man of Tomorrow has a double, if not like a triple meaning? Like, what if Superman, it's like a question of who will be the Man of Tomorrow, whose ideals will end up emerging from this conflict that happens in the second movie. So we could see, like, Superman, will Superman be the Man of Tomorrow? Will his ideals win out? Will Lex's ideals win out? And then evidently Lex thinks that even Brainiac's ideals are a little bit too overboard, so will Brainiac's ideals win out? Will he be able to, you know, bottle up New York City or Cambridge or whatever and destroy planet Earth? I don't think so, but that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, who is the Man of Tomorrow? Like, is that the question of the movie? So let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know what you guys think about my wish list. Roast me on on Lois having powers, or Martian Manhunter and Lex being best friends, and anything you agree with, disagree with, some wish list items that you want to see in the next Superman movie. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys that are tuning in here, as I'm just kind of ramping things up. So I appreciate all of the support that I've seen so far. So thank you guys. I hope you have a good one.